Hi everybody, welcome to the South Australian Sports Show. Only 2 shows remaining in this year before Christmas comes. Welcome Rob Popplestone to the show. Poppy, how are you?
I'm looking forward to a good Christmas break. I could be honest, it's been a long year, been a good year, and I look forward to next week's episode where we sort of reflect on some of the highlights of 2016. Should be good.
All right, off the top of your head, before we go to Amelia, have you got something sport-wise you'd like in the Christmas sack this year?
Well, I'm always up for a surfboard. After we spoke to Max, he told me that the Trigger Brothers board that I had, about 6'1" single fin, that I bought for about $110 when I was 17 or 18, is worth about 10k. Now, I lent it to a mate before I shifted across to South Australia. That was in 1988. I actually Facebooked him a minute ago to say he's still got it.
Where's my board?
That's right.
I want it back.
So get that back for Christmas, I'll be happy.
You'll be happy with that. All right, we need to get over to Amelia McMahon. You wouldn't believe it, Poppy, at MercedesBenz. Amelia?
Thanks, guys. I'm here at Mercedes-Benz Adelaide with Victoria Veitch, and today we're going to be having a chat about women's cycling. Welcome, Victoria.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us about how you got into women's cycling.
Well, I was, like many new cyclists, looking for an alternative sport. I was a runner and that wasn't going so well. I had to admit finally that I wasn't very good at it and my husband kept beating me. And people think there's a really complicated reason to why I changed over to cycling. I literally walked into a bike shop, saw a pink bike and thought, that's my sport.
That's fantastic. I hope you've kept the pink bike over the years.
Well, I actually got hit by a car and wrote it off. But yes, it started a passion and I haven't looked back.
That's fantastic. So can you tell us when you found your sporting team, MBA Elite Women's?
So the Mercedes-Benz team came to life a couple of years ago. The history of the team was as the Clipsal cycling team, and eventually we saw a bit of a shift in sponsorship. Mercedes-Benz wanted to come on board as the naming rights sponsor. By then we were essentially a men's team, quite a big men's team. We had 3 divisions, 30 men on the road. The Elite Women we started probably a few years ago. I was approached by a couple of female athletes who were friends, who I'd seen at races, and they were really seeing whether Mercedes-Benz would like to begin a women's team. And I thought, well, spend all this time cycling against men. I'm feeling a little, I'd like some estrogen mixed in there, and we slowly built from there.
So have you guys gone professionally and competitively? You've competed in the Tour Down Under?
Yeah, surprisingly well. We're a really small team compared to the big budget Eastern States teams. We've done better than most people thought we could have, really, based on the roster that we've got. Our first Tour Down Under, there was 15 teams entered and we came out 8th. And so we started thinking, wow, I mean, this is, we were taking it seriously, we were training hard, but we didn't think we'd achieve that sort of result against teams who are running semi-professional athletes. So we just started running with it, and as a group of girls, we were training hard. We were always on the look for other athletes who were at a similar level. In that respect, we started to recruit riders from interstate as well to supplement our list. When it came to this year's Santos Women's Tour, excluding, of course, the World UCI teams, out of the National Road Series teams, we came 3rd.
That's fantastic, and for such a young squad as well, what an achievement.
It's funny that you say young squad. Yes, we are only a squad that's 2 years old. We're all old people though, unfortunately. Most of my elite women are over the age of 35.
Well, it's great to see women in sport at that age still.
Yeah, there's less of us around though. The young girls unfortunately keep getting faster, and I'm convinced I'm going to die of old age on the bike one day. But these girls, they work full time. They don't have a big budget behind them. I know that most of us get up at 4:30 in the morning just to get our training done. We're training 6 out of 7 days, we're racing, but most importantly, we just want to represent South Australia, because we are the only team outside of the South Australian Sports Institute to run a national road series team. That's really important, because without that, there's no pathway for young developing riders in South Australia to have access to that level. They're not going to get recruited by Eastern State teams, you know, because the Eastern State teams have a heap of riders in the Eastern States. So unless we've got a team running, there's very little opportunity to go into that level of competition.
Well, I noticed that you have accomplished quite a bit, finishing third this year, but you've also accomplished a bit off the field. By just having a look at your kit here, it's very noticeable.
Well, look, I think one of the privileges of managing a team is I get to choose the colours.
Yeah, you've done very well.
And I'm a big fan of purple. Look, we're really lucky to have Black Chrome Sportswear behind the team. They used us as a development team because they're new to the cycling kit industry. So we were their test team and we went through all their prototypes. And we came to the point where they actually said, look, can we help a little bit more and actually sponsor your National Road Series team and provide you with kit to keep you on the road? Now, as soon as a sponsor does that, an enormous stress comes off of my budget, because to support women financially at the National Road Series level, sometimes I can be spending $1,000 a round just to nominate the team. So if I don't have to worry about actually having my athletes in clothing, that was a really big stress off my back.
It makes a big difference, doesn't it?
It does, absolutely. It's the biggest kit cost, is the biggest cost of keeping a cycling team on the road. When you've got a squad of 62 riders, and that includes men and vision impaired athletes and para athletes and elite women, any help to minimise that cost, but at the same time get the brands of all of our sponsors onto the road in that saturation, really big help.
Well, speaking of sponsors, we're here today at Mercedes-Benz Adelaide. When did they come on board and support your team?
Mercedes-Benz saved us really a couple of years ago. The team came pretty close to financially folding. Mercedes really came on board because they were very interested and very motivated by our investment in paracycling. We started with the Tandem project before we started with the elite women. Our Tandem project is the only program in Australia which supports vision impaired riders. So we provide the equipment. We started off with 3 tandems, we now have 15, and our team members are the pilots. For every vision impaired rider, you need a pilot to take them for a ride. So in terms of volunteer hours, our team provides equivalent to a full-time person, and if you look at minimum wage, the team's investment is about $35,000 a year in being able to provide personnel for vision impaired riders. So when we approached Mercedes-Benz, really it was our Tandem project that they went, you know, wow, this is fantastic, how do we help? And from that point forward, they jumped on board as the naming rights sponsor. And then a couple of years ago, we then said, well, you know what? Women could really do with some help as well. How about we further diversify into that? And they said, absolutely.
Well, isn't that fantastic? And I'm sure it makes a world of difference for the team.
It does. Without sponsorship, the squad doesn't exist. And again, the opportunity for women, it's really hard to get sponsors to acknowledge women's sport when this South Australian squad is the only squad going away to this national elite series against all these Eastern State teams. So without the sponsorship, we don't exist, and then women in this state don't have the opportunity.
We've touched on the Tandem project, a beautiful initiative of the team. Just quickly, could you tell us who's on board? I understand you've had a gold Olympic athlete competing for you, Kieran Modra.
Kieran Modra's been to 8 Olympic Games. He has 5 Paralympic gold medals, and he's the mentor for our vision impaired athletes. He trains our pilots as well, and he's also giving mentorship to some of our elite women athletes who are also up in a para category. A couple of our women athletes have had brain injuries and other issues, so we try to have somebody who has experience with paracycling.
Well, isn't that fantastic? Well, at the SA Sports Show, we wish you all the best for your future endeavours, yourself and the team.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us today.
You're very welcome.
And that's all, guys. We'll have more after the break on the SA Sports Show.